Hi, thanks so much for having me today. Yeah, so I wanted to give a quick introduction, a little bit, and then I'll talk a little bit about my journey, and then probably talk a little bit about like the top five lessons that I could think about based on my experience so far. So, I'm Shivranjani. I graduated in 2015. I'm a senior software developer at ThoughtWorks UK. It's a consultancy based out of Chicago, but I've been working in the London office since 2019. Before that, I did my internship when I was in campus in JP Morgan, and then I worked at Oracle and then Adobe. Outside of me working as a software engineer, I also am the founder and executive director of the Jitesh Raj Scholarship, which I think a lot of people at NIT Trichy might know. Um, and yeah, outside of after doing my computer science in NIT Trichy in 2015, I also did my master's at King's College London in 2019. And outside of all of this, I've done a few stuff, including I did a sort of like a foundational business course in Harvard Business School online. I've done a startup summer school in Kyoto, as well as angel investing in London. So I think my three spheres of interest are tech, um, nonprofit, and entrepreneurship. So yeah, so that's where I come from. You can move on. Yeah, and yeah, areas of interest also include innovation and scalability, tech for good, tech for all, developer productivity, and tech culture. And I will touch upon a few of these topics as we go along. You can move on to the next slide, Sai Sandhya. Yeah, so I wanted to share my journey mostly because I actually absolutely love the fact that, today you managed to put together a very diverse panel. People come from very different backgrounds, and I thought that, I need to share that part of it because it's not just about the credentials that you have, it's also about how you got there. So I actually grew up entirely in Trichy, not in Trichy. I grew up in Trichy, and I did my schooling there. I was in matriculation till 10th, and then I wanted to move to CBSE because I was introduced to this concept of JEE and IIT and NIT when I completed 10th. And then I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna give this a shot. So I was the first one in the family to even try JEE, and luckily I was able to get into an Trichy. And then when I got into an Trichy, I got this very strong belief in interdisciplinary innovation, which sort of prompted me towards Pragyan as a way of, exploring what that means within our society. And then after NIT Trichy, I joined Oracle. That was my first job after college, and suddenly there are a lot of things that you see, in terms of the gap between what you learn at NIT and what is being done in the industry. I think that gap is actually closing quite a bit. I mean, the fact that you're doing a session like this, itself is fantastic. I did not get a chance like that when I was in college. So it always sort of like relied on who you knew and what you spoke about and stuff like that. So yeah, so I sort of took the long way, but finally I'm here. And then I moved to Adobe, and that was a point where I realized what I needed to thrive in tech, and that is some of the things that I wanted to talk about. When you switch ecosystems, you suddenly see, okay, you know what, these are different ways of doing things, and these are also different things that affects you in everyday life and things like that. There was also another experience when I was at Adobe, which was that I got to do a education technology sort of a volunteering experience in South Africa, which I found very, very enlightening, specifically because it's software engineering can be a bubble in itself. You sort of like think about the problems, and you get bogged down by a lot of details, and you might not necessarily think about like your end users or the people that you're trying to influence at the end of the day. A simple example is when I was in South Africa, a lot of tech companies had like provided laptops to a lot of the schools there, which you might think is great. And, teachers were able to use laptops and stuff like that. But what that also meant is the schools were suddenly very unsafe because people were trying to steal laptops, and therefore teachers were getting assaulted because of that. So things like that are things that you don't exactly think about when you're like coming up with a solution, and ideally you should, which is why I try to put empathy at the top of everything. So yeah, very enlightening experience that way. And after Adobe, I had a bit of a thought about what I wanted to do next, and I decided to go to King's College London. It is a university in the UK, which I think is, I'm happy to have a discussion about UK versus US or any other country that you might like. There's pros and cons to all of it. I primarily went there because I got a full scholarship, and that was the only way that I could afford masters. So I decided to go there, and my choice of university also relied on the fact that I wanted it to be a multidisciplinary environment. After coming from NIT Trichy, where it's only engineering, and obviously there's a few architecture people, but I wanted a truly multidisciplinary environment, and that sort of drove me towards King's College London. And then I'm at ThoughtWorks right now. It's the longest job I've had, which I think is fantastic. I've gotten to work on software that I use I mean, I work on different kinds of projects every day. And, so far I've like worked on projects that are used by people with disability, used in marine research, in developer productivity, etc. So that's a little bit about my journey. It's a bit of a zigzag journey, and I think that is something that's very important. It's not always going to be linear. You will learn things along the way. You will realize what is it that you want to do, things that you enjoy, things that you don't enjoy. I absolutely loved Aishwarya's example of, oh, I thought this is what I wanted. And then when I went into it, you realize something else. And I think that's fantastic. That's a really good insight to have. So yeah, so just wanted to share my journey around that. And then we can move on to the next slide, my final slide. So the top 5 lessons that I wanted to share based on all of my journey. So the first thing is about develop strong foundation and first principles. So you will learn a lot of different things around technology and advanced technologies and applied technologies. There's a lot of things that you will learn, but almost always you kind of come back to certain first principles. By that I mean basic problem solving, which includes, okay, have a very methodical, systematic thinking about going about things. Are you thinking about things holistically? And, are you making sure that you understand the consequences of everything that you're doing? So things like that are things that you need to keep in mind. Second thing is around earning trust. It's it's one of the few things that sometimes people don't realize, which is that okay, there is all these things about doing fancy stuff, but at the end of the day, when you're working in a team, very often it just comes down to being able to earn trust so that you are able to deliver something really great, and then progress as you go along. So when I say earning trust, it usually comes from two things. One is competence. So always keep learning, always keep developing yourself, and reliability. How often are you reliable? How often do people have to chase you for like doing stuff, or are you taking accountability for your own work? So very, very small things, but they really make a big difference. Self-awareness, very, very important. Again, people have touched upon like exploring things, really understanding what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and so that you have a very a good clarity about what you want, and what is it that you bring to the table as well. And finally, empathy. I mentioned about that. I think empathy is very, very important, especially currently. There's so much conversations going on around tech, around big tech, especially. Is everything that big tech is doing right or wrong? And are we actually making the world a better place? And, are the decisions that we're doing around privacy, around safety online, and all these different things, it's very, very important for you to always keep empathy at the end of it, because real people get affected by what you do. So that's a thing that can be easy to forget when you're sitting inside your cubicle or wherever it is that you work, and and you forget about the outside world. The second thing that I want to mention is, and there's just a reality around it. Tech is misogynistic, and that's just a way that you put it. But it is changing. It's actually much less misogynistic than a lot of other fields that I've seen. And it is also changing as we are going along, especially because of initiatives like what you are doing right now, and the fact that there are so many women on this call, trying to make changes. So, just around that, I would say, one, be careful who you listen to. There's a lot of like very strong opinions around, oh, this is the only right way to do tech. You have to do these things. You have to learn this tech, or you have to do it this way. Otherwise, it's all terrible and stuff like that. So none of that is true. Um, there are multiple ways of doing things. It's just about how you want to go about it and what works for you. So yeah, so try and make sure that you like listen to the right people. Find your personal board of advisors, and these can come from people of any gender, background, or part of your own life. Like make sure that you have people, mentors. You can reach out to people in your workplace. Make sure you tell them, hey, this is what my aspirations are, and this is where I want to go. So make sure that you try and get help. even very, very recently, as like yesterday, this sort of like came to my help because I was so stressed out at work and I needed people who were able to bring me back to reality around all the different things, the complexities of my life. So I think that's a really, really good thing. And the third thing is team is more more important than company. By that I mean it's great to work at like recognizable companies and stuff, and it's great to have all the benefits that come with it. All of that is fantastic, but the honeymoon period kind of like fades away after a little while. After that, it becomes about the team and the kind of people that you work with on an everyday basis, and what does your everyday life look like. So keep that in mind, and when you're making choices, sometimes you might not have too much of a control over which team you get put in, but you have the chance to shape the team as well as decide, hey, you know what, I can find better teams. So yeah, there's always that. Third thing is around find understand what motivates you. For me, it's impact, people, and problem solving, and in that order. Hopefully, all of you are here because you enjoy problem solving at some level, or you got forced by your parents to join NIT Trichy. I don't know which one, but yeah, like problem solving is going to be a part of the engineer's life. But for me, impact and people are a lot more important than that. So as a rule, I don't generally work with people that I find very arrogant or like, very pushy and like stuff like that. And that is something I built up the confidence to say that after a lot of bad experiences. So yeah, so just something for you to keep in mind and understand what your true values are. Look at the big picture and ask why. I think Lalita touched upon this beautifully. Always make sure to ask why, because sometimes the solution to a problem is not writing code. It's about trying to understand what is the most simple and elegant solution to that problem is. So always ask questions, always understand why you're doing something. And in your career also, it's important to ask why, because one of the things that I've heard as well as seen people say is the fact that women tend to focus on the everyday job. So you try to like do everything today really, really well, which is great. But at the same time, you kind of want to take on tasks that is going to add to your career progression, that is going to actually add to what is it that you want to do in your life, what is the kind of impact that you want to leave on the world. So always look at the big picture and try to keep that in your mind. There are different ways to do it, and I can talk about that after this, I suppose. And finally, celebrate small and big wins. I cannot stress this enough. Everything in our entire life we've been told, oh, NIT and IIT are the good things, and oh, we didn't get IIT, so we have settled for NIT. And then you're like, oh, we didn't get FANG, so we have settled for something else. Oh, we didn't get this university, so this thing. Oh, we didn't get this particular thing in tech, so this thing. So it's like it's always a comparison game, and it's very, very detrimental, and it's very, very unproductive. I really want you to be able to look at yourself and really celebrate even the small wins, especially if some of you are like planning on doing a PhD. This is very, very important because PhD is a very, very long road, and I have seen people feel like, oh my God, like until get to the end of that 5 to 7 years, there's like nothing for me to celebrate till then. And also I've seen people where it's like, okay, like, until that point, you have a charted path where you're like, okay, you finish 10th, you finish 12th, you finish college, you get a job, you get married, or whatever it is, like the next thing is. So it's like a moving goalpost at every point. And once you're done with all of that, you're like, Okay, now what in life?" So that is a question that will come and hit you, and you're like, you don't know what you're doing. So try and make sure that you are in the moment, and celebrate the wins that as they come along as well. So yeah, so that's my big monologue, I think. Thanks so much for the time.